Hello everyone and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. On today's episode we're going to make this old mill painting. I'll show you all the steps along the way. It's a little bit lengthy tutorial, but I think you're going to learn a lot, so stay tuned to the end. So we're going to use a lot of Topaz Studio stuff. We're going to work in Photoshop. We're going to dodge. We're going to burn. We're going to do a lot of things, and I think you're going to learn a lot. So stick with me, stay tuned, and let's get started. Okay, we're starting out here in Photoshop, and here's the painting that I came up with, and let me show you the original. So here's the original, and we're going to work off of this. Okay, what I want to start out with is taking this layer 8, which is the original right here, and moving it to the top of the layer stack here. And here's a really cool shortcut for that, and that would be Shift Command right bracket key. Or on a PC, it's probably Shift Control right bracket key. Let's start off by duplicating the background layer, Command or Control J, depending if you're on a Mac or PC, so we can work non-destructively. We're going to come up to Filter and launch Topaz Studio 2. All right, there's a couple steps we're going to do in here. We're going to get a filter, add filter. We're going to get an abstraction filter. I want my simplify size to be up right around 20, according to my notes. 21 is pretty good. I'm really mainly interested in the trees here. And then the next step is to come to the layer mask up here on abstraction. And we're going to, let's see here, we're going to invert this layer mask. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Invert it so it hides everything. And we're going to get a brush, and we're going to get white paint. So move the transparency the whole way to the right. And what we want to do now is, we can leave edge wear on, and we can make our brush a little bit bigger here. And what we're going to do is just paint in this painterly effect to the background. If a little bit gets on the barn, we can fix it. No big deal. Or it's probably not a barn, I'm sorry. It's probably more like looks like a grist mill. Is that what they call that? Not good with these kind of things. But mainly I just want to paint in the background area. Maybe something like that. See, just give me that little painterly look. And the other thing I want to do is make my brush a little bit smaller. And just paint these leaves here so it matches the background a little bit. Okay, so that's the first step. And then we can come and clean up the edges here where we missed a little bit. Around the barn here. Make sure that's all looking pretty good. All right, and I missed a little bit up in here. Edge wear is nice. I had a pretty big brush though, but we can go ahead and fix this little stuff here. And I think that's looking pretty good. So that just gives me a nice painterly look in the background with Simplify. Okay, so then the next step is to go to Add Filter. Let's get another abstraction filter. And let me look at my notes here. So for the barn, I used the same amount, Simplify, like around 0.2. But this time what I did was I took the detail strength and bumped it up to look like around 0.2. Somewhere in there. Now let's do 0.25. I feel like 0.25 right now. Now I want that background to stay soft, so let's do this. Let's come to the first abstraction layer, go to the layer mask. Let's come down here to the layer mask, click these three dots right here, and let's copy this mask. And then let's come up to abstraction, go to the layer mask here, and come down to the layer mask, and let's paste the layer mask. Only it's doing the opposite of what I want it to do, so let's click here again and we'll invert it, and that'll put the effect just on the barn and leave the background soft. So that's looking pretty cool. Actually, I like that look right there too, but we're not done yet. We got a lot more to go. We'll go ahead and accept this. That'll bring us back into Photoshop, and then what I want to do is duplicate this layer. So Command or Control J, and then let's go right back into Topaz Studio 2 again. All right, and we'll launch Topaz Studio 2. Now this time in Topaz Studio 2, what I want to do is add some painterly effect to this image. So what we'll do is come to add filter, we'll come down to impression, and I got a bunch of notes here. So, okay, the first thing we want to do, and I always like to start out here, is come down to the under texture here, come to the background type, click on original, see these little white, canvas dots that are shown through. If I click original, they'll go away, which is nice. I like to start here a lot of times. Sometimes I'll use those, but generally not. I'm going to let the brush be at this first stroke here for now, and I'm just going to make some adjustments. We may go back and change that in a little bit. Then we have a choice here of strokes. We can go low strokes, medium strokes, or high strokes. And I think I'm going to go medium. I'm going to leave the brush size here for now and just start playing around with some of this stuff here. Let's look at the paint volume here. Okay, I'm just going to adjust that a little bit. The paint opacity. Might just pull that up slightly. I don't want to add any rotation. No variation of rotation. Color, stroke color variation. I might just throw a little bit of that in. And let's see here. Then we can look at our stroke width. I don't want my strokes to be too large here. I want to keep some detail in that building. But I want that building to go painterly is what I'm looking for. So find something looks good. And I'm looking down here at the stones and things down here. Want those to maintain some detail. So if I bring my length up too much, it's going to take that detail away. So I want to get a nice little spot. And just play and have fun with this. Spill, it's going to not look too good, so I don't want to add a spill to this. Okay, so I'm just going to double click spill. We could smudge this if we wanted to, but it gets too blurry. I don't want it to look blurry. And the last thing I'm going to do, I'm not going to touch coverage. I'm going to take the painting progress and move it back a little bit and see how that looks. And all I'm doing is just looking at the picture, and if I think it looks nice, I'll stop at that point. I think you can see some little things happening up in the trees here, which looks kind of fun. I'm going to be taking most of this off the trees. And actually, I'm just going to paint this effect in Photoshop. So I'm just looking right there. Because right now, I think it's very heavy-handed, okay? But that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and accept this. And that'll bring us back into Photoshop. And I'll show you what we do next. In Photoshop, the first thing I want to do is add a black hide all layer mask to this. So that's Option, and click on the layer mask icon right here. And that hides everything, all right? And then we're going to paint this effect into the barn area, the foreground here. I might add a little bit to the trees back here as well. So let's get a brush. It's B for brush. And what I want to do is have my opacity set to 100%. So a shortcut is 0. That sets the opacity to 100. And I'm going to have a very low flow. And so what I'm going to do is do Shift O5. That'll give me 5% flow. And what I want to do now is get a decent sized brush. I'm just using the left and right bracket keys here. My brush is very soft, by the way. And I want to make sure I'm painting with white paint. If you're not painting with white paint, you can go D for default. That'll give you white and black. And then you can, if you're not on white, you can hit the X key, and that'll toggle between these two colors here, okay? So we're just going to start to paint some of that painterly effect. And if my flow's too low, now every time I move around, I'm adding more and more paint. That's why I like the low flow, so you can kind of like build this up slowly here. And I'm just adding it to my foreground area here. I might stay off some of these bushes up in here so they look a little more detailed. Get it off some of these rocks, off the mill here. I'm going to come back later and add some detail into these areas. But I just want a nice little painterly look in here. Back in here. Because now I want to bring this barn into the painting of the image. Because I started out with the abstraction on the background, but not on the barn. Okay, so Just want to get the barn to look like a painting here, so everything kind of blends together here. Okay, something like that. Now, I might make my brush a little bigger, and I might just add a little bit of Painterly to the trees just to soften them down a little bit more. Not a whole lot back in here. I'll show you my layer mask when I'm done here. Just want a little bit in here. Okay. So let's, if you option click your layer mask, you can see your layer mask. So you can see what I've done here. Okay. And option click again. And that's what we have. Now, I could take this opacity and pull this the whole way off and just slowly build it up. So maybe I don't want that full amount in there. So if I overpaint it, I can back this off a little bit. And so I might just back it off a little bit. I don't want to go too crazy with this, but maybe around 91% looks pretty good. After studying what I've done for a little bit, I decided I think I went a little bit too crazy back in here. I made this a little too painterly. So what I'm going to do is change my flow to no flow. So that would be Shift 0. That'll set that back to 100. And I'm going to take my opacity and put it at about 10%. And to do that, it's just type the 1 key and that puts the opacity at 10%. Make sure you're painting with black paint. Right now I have white paint on, so I'm going to type the X key. And I'm just going to start to paint over. But it's going to put 10% every time I paint over this area here. Just going to come over this background trees here at 10%. I'm going to hit it again. Another 10%, so that threw 20% down. Okay, let's option click our mask and look at our mask. Yeah, I'm toning that down. See if I paint over this, see how it's putting another 10%. So you can just paint your mask like this too. And you can see the areas where you need to maybe tone it down. I missed here, so I'm going to type the X key and just maybe paint some of that in there. Let me option click this mask, and I think that's looking a little better. I got a little bit more detail back in here. I think everything is matching up pretty nicely. I like the painterly background. The barn has some nice painterly look to it now, so we're getting there. Let's go ahead and pull this all together now, and that's Shift, Option, Command, or Control E. That just brings all these layers and stamps it to a new layer here. And I always like to duplicate the background, so it's Command or Control J from there. We're going to go right back into Topaz Studio 2. All right, and once we're inside the Topaz Studio 2, I added another filter, and I added an AI remix filter to it. I can't remember which thumbnail I used in there, but we'll play around and see if we can find out what I did. AI remix. All right. I do remember using the multiplied blend mode, so let's start out by putting this on the multiplied blend mode. And this is the very first filter that it defaults at, Neon Rise. Let's just pull this opacity back here. Isn't that cool how it kind of like tints the picture? And that's really pretty. And I could really get into that look right there. I like the way it's coloring the image here a little bit. But I think I used more of one of these that were black and white, like maybe Ashen Waves. Let's pull up the opacity here. See, it's just adding some contrast to the image here. Let's click this eyeball here. I actually like that. I probably didn't use this one, but I do like it, and I think I might use it because I like how some details are starting to pop around in here and how these trees are looking up here. It might be a little too heavy-handed, so let me go back here and take this opacity and just add a little bit of that in there. Maybe something like that. Okay, and what I think I'm going to do is, because I like the way the overall image looks, I know I added precision detail next, but I don't want to add it back into these trees here. I mean, I could do some layer masking here, but to me it's easier to work in Photoshop, so you'll see what I'm saying here in a minute. So let me go ahead and accept this. This will launch us back into Photoshop. And then I'm just going to duplicate this layer here. And that would be Command or Control J to duplicate it. And now let's go ahead to Filter. Let's go right back into Topaz Studio 2. And now we're going to add some precision detail. So let's come to add filter, grab a precision detail filter here. And I have some notes here. So I have my small detail at around 0.27, roughly in there. That's good. I have the boost at 0.88. I went a little crazy here because see how all this details are popping out in here. And now I'm not going to add this everywhere. I'm just going to add it where I think it looks best. I'm just gonna, because look at all these textures coming out in the barn. I'm not gonna add it up in the trees here. And I think that was all I did. Oh, wait, no, I had medium. I used the medium at around 0.25, somewhere in there, and medium boost. I even did some medium boosts. I generally don't mess with the boost, but again, as I was experimenting, I thought, this is looking really cool. Okay, now granted, it looks horrible right now, but we'll fix that. So let's go ahead and accept that, and that'll bring us back into Photoshop. Next thing we want to do is put a black hide all layer mask on here. So we'll hold the Option key down, click the little layer mask icon, and we'll hide that. And now we're just going to paint in the details where we like them. Okay, you want to make sure you have a brush tool selected. That shortcut for brush is B for the brush tool. I want my opacity at 100%, so I'll press 0 to get that to 100%. I want to bring my flow down to about 10%, so that would be Shift 0, 1. Okay, so I can just slowly paint that up. Make my brush a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to work on some details, because I was excited when I saw some details pop out on this. You know, say I'm painting, yeah, I'm painting with white paint. Actually, I might bring that flow up to, I have the flow at 1. Actually, I should have went Shift 1. I went Shift 01, which made 1%. Okay, I wanted 10%. I was wondering why that wasn't painting up real nicely. And look at that. Look at that mill coming out in there. Actually, some of this back in here I don't want, so I'm just going to type the X key and just get rid of that detail back in there. I don't want that detail in there coming up. Make my brush a little bit smaller. And type the X key and just paint that detail right back on there. I should have made it smaller and just painted on these little arms here. I guess that's what you call them, arms. Let's paint around here a little bit. Kind of nice. Let's bring some details up on this. I don't know what this thing is called. If anybody knows what this is, leave that in the comments below. I'd like to know. What do they call this? I'll ease it off as I go back. Let me type the X key and just get rid of a little bit of that extra detail right there. X again to go back to white paint. And now let's make my brush a little bit bigger. I'm just going to use the bracket key to make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'm going to paint some detail on these guys here, on these little arms here. Make my brush smaller. Paint this arm here and here, up around here. I want to keep that nice and soft back in there. Maybe bring some detail out in these steps. How about some detail out on these rocks in here? Just use my bracket keys, make it a little bigger. Just right there. Let's bring some detail up in here. I love this technique, you know, just where you just paint detail and where you want it. Because back in the day, people used to just add filters and they just let that filter go crazy. And they would just add it to everything. Might want to bring some detail out in my building here. Around these windows, mainly on the front of the building, less detail on the sides of the building. Right in here, maybe bring a little bit of detail out in here. Now here's where I might bring my flow to a 5%, so that'd be Shift 05, and that you can see the flow goes to 5%. Now I'm just going to paint a little bit of detail here. I like this railing across here. Paint some detail in there. Paint a little bit of detail in here. Maybe just a slight bit right here. Leave it off back here, okay? Maybe that window there a little bit. Okay, so that's looking pretty nice. Now I might throw a little bit of detail up in these rocks here. Make my brush a little bit bigger with my bracket key. These rocks right here. I'm going to leave it nice and soft over here. Okay, so right here, maybe this This rock here, it's a little closer to us. Things that are closer to you, you want to add a little bit more detail to them. And maybe in here, I want to add some details in here. A little bit of detail in there. Right on the edge here a little bit. I'm whispering again. As you know, I like to whisper. It kind of helps me. So let's click this eyeball here. So let's look. Here's the before and here's the after. Kind of nice, right? We're drawing some detail into the building here. Maybe I'll just throw a little bit of detail up here on the roof area here. I want to stay away from those leaves there. I just want to throw a little bit of detail in here. Maybe some of these areas right in here. That's kind of nice. A little bit of texture popping through there. Do I need more in my rocks? I don't know. I guess I do because I'm painting it. All right, maybe this rock needs a little bit of detail. This rock needs a little more detail. Maybe I'll just throw a little bit of detail here, not much. Maybe here just a little bit of detail in here. That's looking pretty nice. Let's look at the before and after with this, click this eyeball of this layer 10 here. Yeah, that's looking good. I'm really happy with that. So far, so good. We're almost done with this. The only thing we have to do is add a little bit of a vignette, and we'll do a little bit of dodging and burning, and I think we'll be done. I'm going to show you a nice little way to add a vignette. So get a lasso tool. You can click it right here or type the L key, and that'll give you a lasso tool. And just draw like a loose selection where you want your vignette to be. So in my case, I want the vignette to be in this outer area right here, okay? And then the next thing you want to do is, with that selection up there, come down to the adjustment layers and get it. It doesn't matter what you get here, but I always get a curve, so just get a curve adjustment layer. Now that does the opposite of what you want, so you want to invert this because you want the white to be on the edge and the black to be in the center. So Command I will invert that. And then come up to your properties dialog up in here and click on where it says curves right here. Click on the little layer mask icon and then take this feather here and bring it up to roughly, and you can experiment with this, probably around 154, 152, 150, somewhere in there. It works. And then here's the trick. Change the blend mode to multiply, and that'll darken the edges. You see that there? That's pretty nice. Now right now where our opacity is 100%, so that's way too much. So take that opacity the whole way off and just slowly build it up. And that makes you a nice, beautiful vignette using the multiply blend mode. Isn't that cool? So let's take it up to maybe around 45%. So let's click the eyeball. There's the before and there's the after. So that's a nice little vignette. So remember that trick. It's really nice. It's a great way of adding vignettes. Now we're just going to do a little bit of dodging and burning. I'm going to use an action I have, a Tony Kuiper action. I have this Tony Kuiper panel and his luminosity mask. I'll show you some of this stuff in future videos. But there's this little action right here. See, it's a dodge tool and that's a burn tool. I'm going to click this. And what it does is it gives me a blank layer set up to paint with white paint and a blend mode of overlay. So you could do that yourself, right? Very simple. But the action just does it real quickly for you. Okay. And then I want to make sure I have a flow of 100%. So I'm just going to type Shift 0. That's a shortcut. And I want my opacity at about 5%. So I'm going to type I'm just going to type 0.5. And that brings my opacity to 5%. And then I'm just going to take highlighted areas and paint with that white paint. And just lighten up some of these light areas. See, like in here. Just add a little bit of, variation to this. Dodging and burning is very important. And I've showed you that in the past. Areas that you just want to kiss some light across. Like, look at this beautiful stuff in here. It's exciting. Dodging and burning is really a beautiful, fun thing to do. It just adds a little bit of light and emphasis on lighted areas. Like in here. There's some light hitting over in here. You don't want to go crazy, but I'm just at 5%. Every time you paint, you'll get another 5% if you lift your brush. Okay, some areas up in here. You can come up into your trees up in here. throw little bits of light coming through, like zinging through. Like here's a little pocket of light coming through here. A little bit of light up in here. And then we'll come back in and we'll do some burning. But we'll just add some nice little dances of light into our image. I love light. I mean, photography means painting with light, right? It's really cool. So we just want to add some little bits of light, make this little meal come out in here. And again, we're painting with the overlay blend mode. So it's not really going to affect dark things. It's only going to affect light things when we're using white paint. Okay. So maybe throw a little bit of light down in here, a little bit of light coming across these rocks. And like I said, we're going to come back in and get some dark paint. Okay, so let's click this eyeball. Here's the before and here's the after. Maybe just throw a little bit of light up in here, across here. Maybe throw a little bit of light here, draw a little bit of emphasis to that. Maybe right there. I think that's looking pretty good. I like what's happened to my meal here. It's looking really nice. Maybe just throw a little bit of light right in there. Okay. See that before and after. And if you want too strong, just take your opacity. So I always tell you, just pull that opacity back and just slowly build it up and add as much of that as you want. So let's click this eyeball. There's a before and after. Okay, looking nice. I'm liking it so far. Might just throw a little bit of light on that roof up there. Now I'm going to go to this action right here. This is a burn action. So notice what it does. It does another blank layer, sets it to the soft light blend mode, and sets you up with black paint. And again, I want to be painting with about, usually if I'm burning, I paint a little stronger. So I'm going to go to, type the 1 key, go to 10%. And now I'm just going to go for darker areas and just work on my shadow areas a little bit. Building up some shadows like in here. Okay, some shadows down in here. This adds depth and dimension to your image as well. Just look for areas that are dark and just accent them. That's how you can tell where to paint. Dark areas you want to paint dark, light areas you want to paint light. You don't have to paint every light area light, but you can just go through and paint the ones you want, which is nice. So paint on some of those trees in there. Again, I'm going back to whispering because whispering helps me to get into the mood of this whole thing. Make those shadows a little bit deeper, maybe on some of these rocks. The shadow here. Darken this up a little bit. Down in here a little bit. And take your time in this. I'm going really fast here. Normally I would take a lot of time and really contour all these shapes. And this brings out textures and all kind of things. Maybe emphasize those shadows in there a little bit. Maybe in here, maybe this corner, maybe right there a little bit. Up here along the, I guess you call these the eaves of the roof. You can paint a little bit of darkness. Let that light just dance down there. That's really cool. Maybe paint some darkness back in here. Let's hit the eyeball here. There's the before and after. Yeah, that's looking good. I'm kind of happy with that. I think we're really done. We're ready to sign this one. All right, so let's take this black paint, the burn layer, and let's take the opacity the whole way off and then just slowly build it up till we get it to where we think it looks nice. All right, so here is the before and there's the after. Then you can take these two layers right here. The burn layer selected, shift click the dodge layer, and then come down to this little icon, puts those guys in a group. And you could name that dodge and burn if you wanted to. And you should name these layers. I didn't because I'm doing a video and I don't have time to do it all. Okay, so there we go. So dodge and burn. So I can click this dodge and burn layer off and you can see the before and after. But it just adds some nice little extra nuances to the image. Now let me take this opacity of the group here, pull it the whole way off, and then just slowly build it up. And I like it 100%. So here's the before and there's the after. So there we go. We have our painting done. I hope you really enjoyed this one today. I had a lot of fun doing it. I know there's a lot of steps in here, but here's the thing. When you're doing photo art, I don't like just canned looks out of software. I like to add multiple filters, and I want my image to have a signature look to it, not just look like I ran a canned filter on it. So that's why I do all these extra steps, and you end up with a nice original piece of art that you made yourself, and it's a lot of fun. Well, the painting is complete. We went from this picture right there, really cool picture, but we turned it into this, and I'm really happy with it. I hope you enjoyed this one today. Give it a try. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. If you enjoyed the video today, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And also, if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and click the bell notification icon. This way, every time I put out a new video, you'll know about it. Well, thank you very much for joining me today in The Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. And I'll see each and every one of you right here